Before Robin leaves, she asks both men if they'd like something to drink. Both men say coffee, and it's only after Strike asks for his coffee does he remember that he has no cream, or sugar, or cups. For years and years now, people have been asking me to do a read-through of Harry Potter. Like many millennials, I grew up reading the Harry Potter series, and as such, I don't think that I could actually be objective about many things in the novel. However, there is something that I've never read before, which is, maybe I'd better take a step back. In case you hadn't noticed, this book is written by somebody named Robert Galbraith, which, as most people could tell you, is not the same name on the cover of Harry Potter. But it's now no longer a secret that J.K. Rowling started to write the Cormoran Strike books under a different pen name out of curiosity if her book would do well away from the fame of Harry Potter. So yeah, I've never read the series. In fact, I hardly ever dissect crime dramas, although I do enjoy the occasional one in my free time. I don't really know what to expect for this. Maybe it'll be really great, maybe it'll be really horrible, although judging by the 3.8 star average on Goodreads is probably exactly in the middle. Anyway, let's get started with the warning. Always a good sign, right? This book contains harsh scenes that some people might find upsetting. Viewer discretion is advised. Prologue. This story opens on a pack of reporters eagerly snapping photos of the nearby scene as they waited, and waited, and waited some more. So much time is spent on these reporters, the entire first page in fact. We get it. Move on, please. The police are waiting around in a tent with the body, a young woman, possibly some sort of celebrity or Paris Hilton type who fell from a balcony, famous enough that her death caused all of those reporters to come out. The question is asked by the police. Was she alone when she fell to her death, or was there somebody up there who pushed her? A witness claims that she saw somebody else on the balcony with the deceased. After the ambulance shows up, the narration quickly moves along. The police investigated the woman's famous boyfriend who ran off to hide in rehab. But then the witness recanted, and it turned out to have been suicide after all. They wrote that she was unbalanced, unstable, unsuited to the superstardom her wildness and her beauty had snared, that she had moved along in a moral, moneyed class that had corrupted her, that the decadence of her new life had unhinged an already fragile personality. Every freaking time. But after the truth of what really happened came out, people stopped caring and quickly moved on to the next thing. Part 1, Chapter 1. We're introduced to Robin, a young woman. As the narration strives to introduce her, I thought for a moment that we were taken back in time to witness the final moments of the celebutante from the prologue. But no, Robin is a girl from the country who has recently moved to London in the hopes of getting a better job. Before we actually get into that, however, we're introduced to Robin via her getting engaged to Matthew. So much time is spent on it, but at the end I'm not quite sure that any of it was actually relevant. Anyway, Robin has been doing temp work since she moved to London, but now she has a couple of proper job interviews lined up, so she feels much better about her future. Again, the narration brings everything to a screeching halt so that it can describe things that, quite frankly, I don't give a hoot about. How she tries not to look like an easy mark by asking the people at the temp agency to hand draw her map of her commute to her next job interview on the tube. As she's walking up the steps to the building, she almost has a run-in with a lady who is running away as fast as she can. This is described in such agonizing detail that I have to wonder if this woman isn't going to come back around later. I sure hope so for the amount of time that we spend on a split-second interaction. Robin continues into the building and goes up to the floor where her interview is to take place, only to realize that it is a PI office with the series' titular CB strike. Robin feels happy since she secretly always wanted to be a private detective. But as she goes to open the door, a large man rushes out and physically knocks her over. Chapter 2. We jump to Mr. Strike's point of view, who is in fact the man who barreled into Robin at the end of the previous chapter. He obviously grabs her in order to prevent her from falling over the stairs, but he has to do it quite roughly. It's only after that he realizes that he grabbed her by a rather awkward place for anybody to grab a woman. She asks to confirm his identity and then says that she's from the temp agency. Strike doesn't exactly like hearing this and tells the readers that he's already swimming in debt. He can't afford to keep the lights on, let alone to pay the temp agency for the promised week of Robin's service. He goes into the bathroom where the narration does the unforgivable sin. It describes Strike's appearance as he's looking at himself in the mirror. Why would you write this? His thick curly hair, springy as a carpet, had ensured that his many youthful nicknames had included Pube Head. I had to read this, and so do you. Strike fills up the sink with water before sticking his head in. While he's in there, he thinks about getting into a fight with some lady named Charlotte. She's the one that Robin almost ran into as she was entering the building. I'm not quite sure what Charlotte is to Strike, his girlfriend or wife, since they seem to be living together. Strike was on his way out to chase after her, worried about her mental health, worried that she'd try to jump in front of an oncoming train. Once, after a particularly vicious row in their mid-20s, she had climbed onto a rooftop where she had swayed drunkenly, vowing to jump. That sounds completely healthy, and I would never recommend that this lady should be under the care of a psychiatrist. Yes, I'm being sarcastic. But now that Robin showed up, Strike is happy for some kind of intervention. That maybe it's some kind of a higher sign that he should simply give up Charlotte. He goes back out where Robin asks if he's okay, but she also gives him an out for having hired her in the first place. Strike tells her to stay and gives her some basic tasks for her to do, such as opening the mail and tidying up. As she starts to do that, he goes to his office where he wallows in his own misery for a little bit. After a moment, he knows that Robin is checking the work email, where she will discover that he hasn't had a work-related email in 3 weeks. That all of the mail he will have gotten will be overdue bills that he can't pay. Chapter 3. A few minutes later, Robin comes back into his office. She had taken off her coat to reveal a snugly, even seductively fitting cream sweater. Can we not? Anyway, Robin tells him that there's a client, and Strike begins to panic because he looks terrible. He fusses about before the client can come in, and as if that wasn't bad enough, we continue to pause the narration so that we can describe this client. Before Robin leaves, she asks both men if they'd like something to drink. Both men say coffee, and it's only after Strike asks for his coffee does he remember that he has no cream, or sugar, or cups. Strike goes to ask John what he can do for him. John instead says that he remembers Strike and asks if he remembers his brother Charlie, who died when he was 9. This takes us down memory lane to a childhood friend of Strike's, but when class resumed after Easter break, the teacher tearfully told them that Charlie had ridden his bike into a quarry and died. She had been a mean old dog, that teacher, and she had not been able to resist telling the class that Charlie, who they would remember often disobeying grown-ups, had been expressly forbidden to ride anywhere near the quarry, but that he had done so anyway, perhaps showing off, but she had been forced to stop there because 2 little girls in the front row were sobbing. Also worth noting that these children were 9, so I think that it goes without saying, but what the hell? Back in the present, Strike says that he remembers Charlie. John says that he remembered his brother talking about Cormorant Strike, and it's such an unusual name, so when he was looking for a PI, he saw the name in the phone book and he thought that it was fate. Finally, nearly 4 pages after John sat down as he get around to the point of why he's come, he says that he had another sibling, a sister, named Lula Landry, but she's dead now too. He continues on to explain that all of the Barristow siblings were adopted, and that Strike wouldn't have known Lula because the Barristows didn't adopt her until after Charlie had died. John bursts into tears as he remembers his parents bringing Lula home for the first time when she was 4. It's then that Robin comes back with coffee cups Strike has never seen before, along with chocolate biscuits Strike has also never seen before. There's a woman waiting in the other room, too. Strike passes Robin a note asking for her to quickly Google if Lula Landry was adopted and by whom, who the other woman waiting is, and to quietly return the note with both answers. John continues to blubber on about his sister, and about how now that Lula died, his mother gave up and also died. There's apparently a lot of it about. Anyway, if you haven't figured it out, this is the celebrity from the prologue, the death that the police have already ruled a suicide. And if you also haven't figured this out, but John doesn't think that his sister's death was suicide, which is why he's come to Strike. Robin comes back in and gives Strike a note. It says that Lula was adopted by the Barristow family, but took on her mother's maiden name when she started modeling. And it goes on to say that the woman waiting is John's girlfriend and secretary at the law firm that he works at, and the picture on the company website identifies that it's the same man sitting in front of Strike. Since Strike now has confirmation that this man isn't a complete lunatic, he tells John to continue on with more info about Lula. John says that he knows that Lula had a problem with drugs. She was kicked out of school for it and then ran away from home for a while. Their parents found Lula in London living with some addicts. John continues on to say that the medical examiner and police refused to look past a troubled celebrity with a drug problem, but he knows that his sister wouldn't kill herself, mainly because he'd looked over a new contract she'd brought him while with him being a lawyer, and it would have brought her £5 million in 2 years, and she had an upcoming shot in Morocco. Strike doesn't exactly find any of that convincing. In his experience, a few hours can make all the difference between upbeat and looking forward to the future and, well. John goes on to say that there was a witness, a downstairs neighbor who claimed that she heard fighting right before Lula went over the balcony, but the police dismissed the witness because she'd been high on cocaine. John argues that being high doesn't mean that her ears weren't working. John also says that there was CCTV footage of a man heading towards Lula's apartment, and then 20 minutes later he was running away from the area, but that police were never able to identify him. John produces an envelope full of money. Even though it would save his PI business, Strike doesn't take it. Instead, he argues that with the spotlight on the police following Lula's death, it would have been obvious if there had been any missteps taken. But John insists that somebody killed his sister, offers to pay him double, but then he gets angry and leaves. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book, Snark's always free and updated every morning. Newly added to Patreon is to become a member without paying. You'll get access to the same things on Tumblr, but on Patreon. Also new is a 1-week free Patreon trial, so be sure to check that out. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snark so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just $10 per chapter. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of spicy short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!